And so why don't we open the meeting? The members of the committee all know each other, but we may not know, everyone may not know the petitioners. I can. So why don't I ask the petitioners to just introduce themselves for just a quick minute.
Sure. Elisa Plazanja, Precinct 8. I'm a co-leader of Mothers Out Front Tree Team, Brookline Mothers Out Front, and also a board member of Climate Action Brookline. Olivia?
Hi, I'm Olivia Fisher-Fox. I co-coordinated the tree team for Brookline Mothers Out Front along with Elisa. And I'm also a board member for Brookline Green Space Alliance and live in Precinct 4. Catherine, you're muted. Catherine's muted.
Catherine, we didn't hear you because you were muted. So if you want to unmute yourself.
I did unmute. Yes, I'm sorry.
There you are. There you are. We hear you now.
My name is Catherine Donaher, long-term resident of Brookline, active member of the Mothers Out Front tree team. That's hard to say.
And we have
Fran Perler, town meeting member, Precinct 8, advisory committee member, and a bunch of other stuff that you all know. Council on Aging.
Among them. Okay. Richard, you want to?
Yeah, am I coming through?
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. I'm driving in the car, so long day at work, so I didn't get out in time.
Okay. So Richard is both a member of the Tree Protection Committee and also a petitioner. Okay, I think that we got everyone, didn't we? Okay, so why don't we start? We have an outline here in the agenda. Starts with a memo to the moderator. I'd rather take that more at the end. And the questions, I'd rather start, if we could, with the thing that's being proposed. And I know, Elisa, that you had a meeting with the subcommittee earlier, and you made a couple of changes. So if you could take the clean copy and just show us what changes you made, that would be great. And describe the warrant article for people.
Sure. Thank you, Nancy.
Now.
Yep. So thank you, Nancy. Let me just see if I can master the part about sharing my screen, which is always a little bit of a challenge. So 1 second. So where we stand with the warrant article currently is, let me see. Please, everyone can see this. So we have been before a number of boards. We were before the planning board, voted in favor 4-1 with 1 abstention to recommend favorable action. We have been before the ACHR subcommittee, most recently just met with them earlier this afternoon, and they voted unanimously to recommend favorable action. We are before the advisory committee tomorrow. We had met with them last week, and they raised a couple issues that led us to, ended up referring it back to the subcommittee, and they led us to make 2 additional proposed amendments to the warrant article that we can update you on. And otherwise, we have we have been before some other committees, but no one has voted on our article yet. And so including the select board, they have not yet voted on our article. So the 2 additional changes that we are proposing is 1, an exemption for the removal of trees that would be to the benefit of the overall health and condition of other trees on the same lot. And so this was something that was raised within the advisory committee, that sometimes, trees can get a little crowded, and it could actually be beneficial to remove a tree in those circumstances, or more than 1 tree. And so we we noted that both Newton and Cambridge, which were really the inspirations for the changes that we're proposing through this warrant article, had exemptions for these circumstances. And so the language that we are proposing to add was lifted almost verbatim from Newton's tree preservation ordinance. So it would allow, when an arborist determines that it would be, better, you'd be better off taking some trees out, for the remaining trees, then that would not be subject to the mitigation requirements of the bylaw. The other change that we're adding was one that was really implied, because there is in the Attorney General's review of the town of Lexington's tree preservation bylaw, they issued a caution that tree preservation bylaws could not interfere with the installation of solar energy systems. And so while we originally did not add that language because we thought it would be implied because of that commentary, a member of the advisory committee had asked about it and asked us to add this explicit exemption. And so we are adding that, and the language here is really borrowing from the language used in the caution issued by the AG's office. So essentially, if someone is planning to install a solar energy system and trees would interfere with that initiative, and there aren't any other options available, so merely trimming the tree or pruning the tree would not solve the problem, or if there's rooftop solar panels, situating them in a different part of the roof wouldn't create a workable solution, then in that case, the person could go ahead and remove those trees without being required to mitigate for their removal, because they're really being removed out of necessity, not out of discretion. So those are the two additional amendments that we have added since the materials were sent to you. So just those.
Keep a right to take Interstate 90 East.
Okay. So would you like us to give a little bit of
yes,
just
I
an
would like
overview?
you to give a presentation for some of the committee members. I don't think have heard your basic presentation, so I think it would be good if you did that. So if
I could start just to give a few opening remarks, and then I'll turn it over to Olivia to really explain some of the details of the warrant article. But in a nutshell, I think it was noted at the time that the current tree preservation bylaw was enacted that the advisory committee noted that it would need to be amended, so from the from the get-go, there was an acknowledgement that the current bylaw was just a small step forward. And so we are seeking to amend the existing tree preservation bylaw, really because in our observation, we're just seeing that its very, very narrow scope is not preventing trees from being removed. So, as I'm sure all of the members of this committee are aware, the current bylaw is only triggered in very limited circumstances. So it only applies on residential property. It only applies during significant construction activity. And then even then, it only protects trees that are within a 20-foot border of the lot line. And so because of that, healthy trees are continuing to be removed with little consequence to the property owner, and only, damage to our environment and our climate. The other, sort of shortcoming of the existing bylaw is the mitigation formula, which, and as Olivia will show, really doesn't begin to remediate for the lost carbon capture that results from removing a healthy, mature tree. So, what we see happening here is that we are allowing our best protection against climate change which is our tree canopy, to be whittled away. And that just leaves us, increasingly vulnerable. So, we are not claiming that trees are going to be the solution to climate change, because they're not, but they are a very important component of our climate resiliency strategy. And it's the one thing that we really can control. So, greenhouse gases are circulating in the atmosphere, which doesn't really, sort of respect any borders. But within Brookline, we have a tree canopy that's providing us with shade and with cooling and with stormwater management and many other benefits that are very well documented in the Urban Forest Climate Resiliency Master Plan. And that plan calls for us to actually increase our tree canopy, and instead it's eroding. So we're not going to be able to keep up by just having the town plant trees. A majority of the tree loss is occurring on private property. And so we feel that it's important that we make an effort to better protect the trees that we do have. So this warrant article is about improving the current bylaw. As I mentioned, the inspiration was taken after an extensive review of other tree preservation laws within Massachusetts. And in particular, we focused on the cities of Newton and Cambridge because they had the most comprehensive protections and the most broad-based protections. And the premise is that in order to truly protect our tree canopy, we need to protect every tree. It can't be just under, when there's construction happening. It can't be just on residential property. We need to protect every mature, healthy tree that we can. And then when, because we can't stop people from taking trees down if they insist on it, but we can ask that they more meaningfully mitigate for the removal of that tree. So that's what we're trying to do here. Olivia, I think you have screen sharing. So do you want to screen share or do you want me to screen share?
If you want to screen share and advance the slides, that'd be great.
Okay, hold on. Well, again, that will require technological skills that may or may not be within my capabilities, but let me hold on one second. Let me just get to, sorry, there's like a big window here. I don't know why. Okay, I'm gonna pull this up and see if.
No, that's not it.
That's not it. Hold on.
While you're looking, I just want to thank everybody for having us today. And some of you are going to hear this presentation again. I kind of feel like I got groupies.
Well, you do.
So thanks for listening. So I want to.
No, I think I got it. Hold on.
So
if you don't, you can also send it to me, Elisa, and I'm happy to share as well.
Yeah. So it was in the materials.
Yeah. Do you want me to just pull it up that way?
If you wouldn't mind. Sorry, I don't know why. Like I see it on my computer, but when I try to share it, it's not showing up as an option. So, oh, here it is. Hold on. Here we go. I found it.
All right, great. Thank you.
All right, here we go.
Thanks, Elisa.
Sorry about that.
No worries. So I'll be talking about climate benefits of significant trees, but first just wanted to review our measurement terms. Trees are measured by their DBH, or diameter at breast height. That's the measurement taken at the trunk, 4.5 feet above the ground. The drip line is measured at the outer edges of the canopy, and the critical root zone is defined by the roots that extend underground, as pictured here. The larger the tree, the greater the climate benefits. Next slide, please. So large trees are climate rock stars. Each group of trees pictured here stores the same amount of carbon. For instance, one mature oak tree with a 54-inch DBH stores 8 tons of carbon. In order to pull the equivalent amount of carbon out of the atmosphere from smaller trees, you would need 465 trees at 4 inches DBH. And that's the group of smallest trees on the right and are the size commonly used for replanting. Next slide, please. So how large are the largest trees coming down in Brookline? Since we do not have that data, we looked to the 5 years worth of data available from Cambridge. Data from Cambridge shows that 75% of healthy trees coming down in that town have a median size of 18 inches DBH. It stores just under a ton of carbon, the same amount as each group of trees pictured here. Under the limited triggers of our current bylaw, that healthy tree would require 9 inches of replanting or a little more than 2 landscape trees boxed out in red, with the option of paying $9,000 into the tree fund. As you can see, replanting comes nowhere near to replace the carbon benefits of the tree the town just lost. And I say town because the urban canopy provides carbon sink to all of us, whether it is on private, public, or commercial land. Next slide, please. The proposed mitigation would require a replacement for a healthy 18-inch DBH tree at 18 inches of DBH, or 4.5 4-inch DBH replacement trees boxed out in red, with a choice of paying the same $9,000 into the tree fund. The tree fund, by the way, is the town's fund to plant and maintain trees in other parts of town that are lost on private property. This amendment asks that you consider taking a small step toward increasing the mitigation for healthy trees lost in town. Next slide, please. So this chart shows the proposed mitigation formula for trees that are between 6 inches of DBH up until 25 inches DBH. The replacement formula increases from a 1/2 inch to 1 inch for every inch of DBH lost, yet the payment formula stays the same. The formula escalates based on the tree size to reflect the value of more mature trees. What this slide also shows is the number of trees that fall into each tier based on data available from Cambridge. So in the second column, you see that 75% of trees being removed fall into the first tier and 19% fall into the second tier, etc. So this mitigation formula, by the way, is currently being implemented in Newton. Next slide, please. So exactly how many trees are coming down in Brookline since the last 6-year measurement was taken in 2020? We don't exactly know. But if you travel down Route 9, Tappan, or Harvard Streets, you see trees coming down in many places. We propose that all trees on all property require a permit so that we can better measure the loss of trees on an annual basis, while simultaneously assuring mitigation. Our current bylaw requires a permit only during large construction projects on residential property and for trees that are within 20 feet of the lot line. The proposed permit requirement would be triggered by the intent to remove a 6-inch DBH tree or greater for all property on the entire lot, even for invasive species, because they too store carbon and cool our town, though mitigation would be determined by a reviewing agent. The permit process would also require that you let your neighbors know as a way of enforcing mitigation for this complaint-driven bylaw. The data gained through this process will help the town better regulate in the future. In short, this bylaw removes a complex set of requirements and simply says you need a permit to cut down a tree in Brookline. And while you will need a permit, this bylaw makes mitigation exemptions under the following circumstances. You will not be required to replant or make a payment into the tree fund if your tree is dead, damaged, or unviable, interfering with public safety, damaged by natural disaster, infected by disease or infestation, removed for the overall health of a wooded area, on 100% affordable housing properties, on properties with owner income at or below 80% area median income, or reasonably interfering with solar panel installation. Next slide, please. Lastly, Warrant Article 16 requires that any tree an owner wants to retain within 30 feet of construction deserves a fence that better protects the tree's critical root zone. We are living in challenging times where trees may be our best ally in the face of climate change. Let's maximize their benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's our introduction.
Okay, great. So you've really told us what the bylaw is about, and I don't know if people got a chance to read the AC's report. I think Mark Penzel did an excellent job, and he's from the Human Services Subcommittee. And some of you might say, well, what do trees have to do with human services? And you know, the answer is that the AC, when it has so many warrant articles, it has to divide them among committees. And the committees with the lowest number of warrant articles get additional warrant articles from other areas. I happen to know this because I was the chair of the subcommittee on human services when I was on the advisory committee. And we had the most esoteric warrant article we had to deal with was whether or not restaurants could serve veal to their customers, because veal is raised, and according to the petitioners, in very inhumane conditions, I believe them actually. But at any rate, so they were trying to protect the baby cows. Anyway, so there are many different subjects that these various committees can take up. It doesn't mean that they are necessarily an expert in trees, and I'm not sure that any one of the committees is an expert in trees, but at any rate, I think they did a very excellent job. And Marcus Penzel wrote the report, and if you haven't read it, I urge you to do that. And even if you just read the first page, which is the executive summary and the and the main issues. So why don't we move to get my agenda out here. Well, Fran, you're on the AC. You want to take a crack at just giving us the bare outlines of Marcus's report?
Well, Marcus had like a 5 or 6 page report, so
yeah.
Just a small summary. Basically, they were very positive. They believe that the town's purpose or goal in the urban tree forest plan wants to improve and increase the tree canopy, yet we're losing it. And he views this article as a way of preserving it. That there has been some legal issues associated with it. And he and others have made the argument that the petitioners have shown, based on the needs and carbon capture and that sort of stuff, that there is a unlikelihood that the town council's objections would be valid. The town council's objections, by admission of the town's council, also apply to the current tree article, so which he didn't have any objections to. So, and Mark Penzel is a lawyer, so he made some arguments that basically dismiss the legality issues. The committee had many suggestions, as well as the select board, and we appreciated, the committee appreciated the petitioners willingness to adapt and putting on my petitioner's hat. The petitioners appreciated the committee's real thoughtful analysis, and many changes were made. We started out with the classic, capture as much as you can, and then as you go through the process, remove things and change things to be more adaptable. This is my third meeting, so I'm not sure if I'm making sense.
You are making sense, but we appreciate that that succinct report.
It was very positive.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe now what we ought to do is hear from the staff about the warrant article, and then I would like to ask the committee members to have the opportunity to ask questions and comment. Tom or Alexandra, do you want to comment?
Or turn to Alexandra and can follow up if there's any other questions.
Great, thanks, Tom. Good evening, everyone. Alexandra Vecchio, Director of Sustainability and Natural Resources and the Acting Director of Parks and Open Space for the Town of Brookline. So first, I also just want to thank the petitioners for all of their work on this. It has been a lot of meetings and a lot of back and forth, and they've been at all of them and very committed to doing the work to really address the different concerns that have been raised. From the outset, when we started, when they approached us about this warrant article and the change to the tree preservation bylaw, I think the first thing that Tom and I said was we're in agreement with the goal that you have here and fully support, kind of the intention behind what's happening. The concern that we raised at the time was we just don't have the staff to enforce something like this. And to be fair, we are a little bit guessing what that staff would be needed in order to do this, because again, we're going off of data from other communities and some assumptions that we're making here. With that being said, the AC subcommittee did ask DPW to take a look and try to, based off the information we have, make our best estimate on what the additional FTEs would be needed to support this work. And so the assessment was that we would need to start at least 2 additional full-time staff within the department to be able to enforce a bylaw of this scope. And so I think the piece that remains and that the petitioners have worked to address in their robust analysis is that the funds that would come into the tree preservation fund would offset the necessary dollars to support the hiring of those staffs and, the additional supplies and vehicles and all the different things that go into that. So I think the real question, and not necessarily one that this committee is tasked with answering, is the town, committed to funding the necessary staff and operations components to enforce this bylaw at the outset, with the assumption that dollars would come in to offset those costs, because until those dollars exist, we do not have the current capabilities to be able to enforce something like this. So I think at this point, Tom and I are happy to answer questions as they arise about the bylaw and, what some of the nuances are and what that would look like, especially from the reviewing agent point of view. But I think the kind of general synopsis of where the department stands is we're in agreement with the intention behind it. We just want to make sure that if this is approved and we are asked to implement it, that there are the resources there to do that. And currently we do not have those. So Tom, anything that you would add to that at this point?
I think that's an excellent summation, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Okay, so why don't we, I see Liz has her hand up. Liz, take a first crack at it. You're muted, we can't hear you. Liz, you're muted.
Yeah. I'm Liz Erdman. I'm a member of the Tree Planting and the Tree Protection Committee, and I echo everyone's thanks for putting the work into getting this warrant article written and through through all these meetings. And I want to, I think it kind of seems to cover two issues at the same time that were brought up in the urban planning, urban resilience plan. And one is the demolition during renovations, and the fact that what we put together with the borders, there are properties that are slipping through the cracks and the loopholes on demolition work. And then also that the resilience plan suggested that all trees be protected, including residential. Now in Newton, there's exemptions for residences. They have, there's a rebate so that the financial burden on a residential homeowner that does a small, not a small, but removes one tree, removes an 8 or a 6-inch tree and needs to purchase 2 more trees to replace that. There are exemptions so that the resident doesn't pay an application fee and basically doesn't pay mitigation fees if they're in the ballpark on that replacement. The numbers that I'm hearing here are daunting, and I would be worried that people who had a tree that probably should come down, it's, you know, not right for its place, not doing well, would hold off because it's just too prohibitively expensive. And so I wonder if there's a way to make the burden on a homeowner, lives in the house, is not renovating, but needs to do tree work, that they would not have the same cost as new construction, you know, new development, which I think is where we're seeing the problems that you're describing and wanting to nip in the bud.
Can I attempt to answer that?
Yeah, let me just make a comment. I know that it's never, not, when you're trying to separate out different classes of people and treat them differently, you kind of get into some problems. So I would just say that. I mean, I'm not an expert in the law in this respect, but I do know that that can be an issue. Who said that they would answer the question? Olivia, go ahead.
So it's just a question for you first. You said if a homeowner needs to take down a tree, why would that homeowner need to take down the tree? Like, what hypothetical situation are you thinking about when you're thinking about this situation?
Personal preference, wanting to use their personal space in a, they have a Norway maple and they can't grow grass, they can't blow flowers, they'd like a little sunshine on the back. They want to reconfigure the way that their yard is.
Yeah, I think that's
an example.
Right. So I think what we're trying to do is, if it's a healthy tree, we're trying to de-incentivize that homeowner from taking it down. And that's why the cost seems high. You know,
it does seem high.
Yeah,
it seems prohibitive. Yeah.
Right. Because we are trying to preserve our urban canopy, the healthy trees. So if that homeowner has a healthy tree, we're trying to incentivize them to please keep it. So the fact that you're, yeah,
penalizing homeowners for taking down invasive trees, and it's a
maybe that's really up to the reviewing agent. You know, it's something that we've had a lot of discussion about, and people have very strong different opinions. I know you have one opinion, because we've talked about it before, but I think and others have other opinions. You know, that sometimes Norway maples are seemingly very healthy, other times not so much. So it really kind of depends on the individual tree. And if that's a, healthy tree that's doing a lot in terms of shade and cooling and, carbon capture and oxygen and cleaning the air, we would hope that that homeowner would prefer to keep that tree and enjoy the grass on other people's property that they can't grow underneath that tree, if that's the issue.
Fran, did you have an additional comment?
Yeah, I think the other thing to think about is everyone talks about humongous numbers for the big trees. The average tree that's 18 inches, you don't have to replant that many trees, and the cost isn't that much if you decide not to plant. And I'm too tired to know the number of trees, but 18 inches is what? Less than 5 tree. How many trees is 18 inch? Like,
Yeah, that was the one in that.
Six 3-inch trees.
And it's an issue of yes, it costs money, but for example, if I want to like overburden the electricity in my house, it's going to cost me money to, if the inspector, to fix that. There are costs of home ownership, and if the tree is sick, if it's damaged, if it's doing a lot of things, you don't have to pay and remediate. And we've tried to do our best to make it not a financial burden unless you have a healthy tree that you just like are bored with.
I think the other thing is that the benefit of your tree is not only to you, the homeowner, but it's also to the greater community, just as other people's trees are helping you and making your air better and dealing with the issue of climate change, which affects us all. So, there's this sort of cost benefit analysis. And we have to decide as a society how we're going to move on that, how we're going to go. If everybody, we already ask people to give us a permit about stormwater bylaw, the stormwater runoff, and making sure that they have the appropriate, if that tree is sucking up a lot of water and they're removing it, where's the water going to go? And then they have to make a plan and probably install some piping and et cetera to, there's a cost to that. But again, that's, you live in a community, and this is one of the costs of it. I see Ken's hand up.
Thank you. Hi, everybody, and thank you to the petitioners too. I appreciate the effort to make this bylaw stronger. But I have some concerns also, and I want to pick up on Liz's point. So one way that a healthy tree may need to go is because if it falls, and trees are probably falling more now with our more extreme storms than ever before, if it falls, it's in a position where it could do damage to neighbor's property. It may not be a safety issue. It may not be safety to the public. It may be safety to your neighbor's garage or home, particularly for people who live on a hill, which I do. And we're constantly, my neighbors and I, looking at the tree growth on each other's property and saying, look, that's a healthy tree there, but I'm afraid of, the way it's precariously rooted right now, that if the next storm, it's going to fall on my house. And we've been known to take trees down in that scenario. So I wonder if we could address, I got another concern too, but why don't we address that one first? If you think that maybe the unhealthy tree definition is broad enough to address that, let me hear it. And if not, maybe we can tighten up that language to address that.
Or so you're saying that trees on a hill are more apt to come down than trees on flat ground? Is that?
I think they're more apt to fall downhill and
They fall downhill, yeah. And that can be, and you can assess that based on the rooting of that tree, is that right?
Yeah, well, you can see on a steep hill that you know the tree is less secure than a tree that is on level ground. I mean, I think that's not hard for even an amateur to assess. So,
well, I would guess I'd have to really defer that to Tom.
Worried about if you think a tree that is apparently healthy, but it's windy, climate change, and whatever, you want to be able to take it down because it might fall in some storm and damage your property or your neighbors. Is that what you're asking about? Irrespective if it's a hill or not.
Right. Well, I think that it is irrespective of whether you're on a hill or not. I just bring out the hill because I'm especially attuned to it on a hill because well, like my trees are in the back of my lot. I'm uphill from my neighbor, and I'm always, you know, and my neighbor too. We're always wondering next storm, is that tree going to fall on my house? So, but in general, if a tree, if the concern is a reasonable concern that it's going to fall, whether it's level ground or on a hill, and do damage, shouldn't you be able to remove that?
I think if the reviewing agent, you know, if you brought a certified arborist over as this warrant article requires, then that would be the person that would determine the chances of it falling. And if the chances look good that it's going to fall in a storm, then that would not require mitigation, that you would take that down without mitigation, without having to pay into a fund or without having to replant.
I don't think your bylaw as drafted makes that clear. I will say that. So I think if we could, you know,
again, the word, well, I don't know. I feel if you wanted to offer language, we could look at it. I do feel like dead, damaged, or unviable, the word unviable, or interfering with public safety.
well,
I think interfering with
public
safety
to me says we're worried about it falling in the street or on the sidewalk. Public, I would think it's a danger to public safety, you know, or it's public personal safety or property safety for one thing, but I think it needs to be you know, damage to abutters. I think it needs to be more specific that we're talking about worrying about it falling on your own house or on somebody else's house, and it's a justifiable concern.
Okay, well, we can take that back to the petitioners, and if you want to offer language.
I'll launch my second concern too. So, believe it or not, there are properties in Brookline that have never been developed, completely wooded lots. And I'm concerned, and this may have to do with something with the town council's concern about a taking. Like, what would the cost be if you had like a totally undeveloped lot? Maybe it's, you know, 15,000 square foot lot full of trees. I think it would be an enormous expense in that instance. It would be punitive. It'd be penalizing people who have given the town the benefit of keeping their lots wooded and natural for many years. And suddenly you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional expense to take out trees from the interior of the lot. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why the 20-foot boundary worked. But I'm not so sure it works when you're talking about wooded lots.
Well, the idea was to protect the trees.
I get that.
This is the tree protection committee I'm talking to, right? I just want to make sure.
No, don't accuse me of not being interested in protecting trees. But what I am interested in is protecting trees in a practical manner where you're not unduly burdening someone who's kept their lot wooded for a long time. I think it's pretty draconian. I think it's pretty draconian when you're talking about a completely wooded lot.
Yeah,
How many people do we really think we're talking about here?
What's that?
How many lots like that are we really talking about here?
I just know of such lots. I've never done a count of how many there are, but I've certainly experienced them.
Richard, do you have any idea how many are in South Brookline?
Do I know how many lots are like that?
How many wooded lots are remaining in South Brookline?
Very few. I would say you're probably dealing with maybe with Ken's situation in around the country club neighborhood.
Yeah.
Which are worth multi-millions of dollars. That the cost, if you're selling it for millions, 50, 75,000, 100,000, whatever the cost is of tree removal. I mean, the Sears Road situation, that clearing that took place off of Sears Road happened because the owner thought that originally the town of Brookline was going to build a second high school in that area, and she thought she was going to lose the land to eminent domain, so she sold it to a developer, and they clear cut the lot. So it was a sad situation, but
yeah.
Anyway, but as far as South Brookline itself, I don't think there's really any lots. And if they've had it as a wooded area for so long, obviously the tree protection, we're trying to discourage and trying to retain as much of a natural habitat as we can around town.
Well, there's a bunch of them on Heath Street, I can tell you that, and it also comes up in a lot with people with double lots, where somebody's got it's on one lot, but they've also got a lot next to it that's developable, and they've never really got around to doing it.
Yeah.
Some of those lots, I would think that if they're heavily wooded, that a number of the trees are kind of scraggly, because they don't have the space of the room or the light to grow into robust trees, and there's an exception in the bylaw for that kind of thing. Take those down.
Is there?
Sorry, tell me, Nancy. Tell me about.
Yeah, what is that exception?
Yeah, Lydia, can you describe that? Where that's the recent? Isn't that the recent thing where you added from the AC?
Nancy, you're thinking of like to thinning out the tree canopy where it would be, to the benefit of the trees remaining on the lot.
Right.
Yeah. So I think
that's going to take down the big trees to save the little trees. I think that's backwards.
Well, taking down the little trees to save the big ones.
You want to take out the little ones to save the big ones. We heard why the big ones, but I thought when I got to that provision in the bylaw, it talks about taking down trees to promote the growth of other trees. Well, the big trees provide the shade and the canopy that's preventing the little trees from growing. So you're actually encouraging taking down the big trees in that instance.
So we're not really taking a position on the circumstance. It would be at the determination of an arborist. So that has to be, in the opinion of a certified arborist, where they would assess the circumstances and make the recommendation that's going to be in the best interest of, the trees overall.
I don't see where your bylaw says that. I got to be honest with you. Right now, it says that we should take down trees if it's preventing other trees from growing. That to me it doesn't say anything about an arborist weighing in on it and deciding it's better to take out the little trees. This is one of the concerns I was bring up. But
the language says trees whose removal is desirable in order to enhance or benefit the health or condition of other trees on the same lot as determined and confirmed in writing by a certified arborist.
Right. So the little trees aren't prohibiting the growth of the big tree. The big tree is prohibiting the growth of the little trees.
Well, I mean, I think it would depend on the individual circumstances, because I was just visiting someone's property where they were trying to show me their tree canopy, and they had, they had a cluster of very mature trees that were competing with each other. So I mean, that is one possibility. This, as I said, this is the language that we took directly from the city of Newton.
Okay.
And
that in itself doesn't.
I know it doesn't. Yeah. Somebody else is doing it. That's what my mother always used to tell me. Somebody else is doing it is not an excuse. So I get that. But I don't think that that's necessarily what it says. I did want to just acknowledge, because we've had a lot of conversation about this, that I think this does involve sort of a different perspective on sort of where we stand as individuals versus our, sort of as a community. And I think Nancy sort of alluded to it a little bit in her comments, and it's really, it's a decision for the town of Brookline to make. But I think what has long happened in our society is that we have prioritized individual rights, and in many cases profit, at the expense of, so we tend to privatize profits and socialize losses. And I think the idea here is that when you remove, a large number of trees, there is harm that's caused to the community and to the environment. And so it's sort of it's almost like a cost of doing business. So in the same way as you think of, extended producer responsibility for plastics, right? You produce plastics, and Maine has taken the position that the producers of plastics can no longer just pass the cost of the life cycle cost of that onto society. So you have to price in the full life cycle cost, which includes disposing of that plastic and the harm that it causes to the environment. And so this is a similar thing, that if you're taking something away from the community, and yes, it is on your private land, and that's sort of the change in mindset, that ultimately Brookline may decide we're not there. We don't agree with that. We're not going to be there. But that's the idea behind it, is that sometimes we, if in a civil society, in a community, we have, there are things that we do for the benefit of the community that maybe would not be our preference, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's draconian when you're talking about a completely wooded lot. I agree with preserving trees to the best of our ability. I agree with making it applicable to commercial properties. I agree with the increased reporting requirements and a lot of what you're doing in the bylaw. But when it comes to trees that are in danger of falling, or you have a reasonable fear that they're falling. B, completely wooded lots. I think this is going too far. And I think the rights of individual property owners, little guys for the most part, need to be respected. And on top of that, I think you've got it upside down when it comes to this assessment of saving trees for that are prohibiting the growth of other trees. You need to be saving the trees that are prohibiting the growth of the other trees somehow. You got to work the language there. We want to save the big ones, not the little ones. The scrubby trees should be able to go, and that might be a way of addressing the problem on the wooded lots.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ken, I think that you also may be able to address it if it's a relatively small lot versus a really, really big one. And a really, really big one is worth millions and millions, and the cost of taking some trees down is minuscule compared to what the people are going to spend to develop it and build a house and the whole thing. I mean, it's not going to be.
I'm sorry, Nancy. You just made the point a couple minutes ago that when you start, dividing it up by classes,
I know. But I think the person on the huge lot is going to be taking down a lot more than the person on a small wooded lot might take down one tree or two trees. The scale is way different. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not so worried about that because I don't really think there are very many wooded lots. and it doesn't affect very many people, and that there are ways that people will be able to mitigate. For instance, if you know, there's also obviously if you have a tree that people want to take, somebody wants to take down because they're afraid it'll fall on their house or it's leaning over, or the last storm, you know, caused it to lean a little more. I mean, obviously, they can have an assessment by an arborist as to the health and the safety of the tree, and you know, if an arborist agrees that it could potentially be a danger, then it can come down. Because that's the way I understand the bylaw. Is that correct, Elisa?
Yes.
I don't think it's clear enough of what you've got right now that fear of a tree falling that is otherwise healthy is grounds for an arborist to tell you that it should go and allow it to go.
Nancy, just interjecting briefly here to let you know that we have a couple of members of the public who are in the audience, and I wasn't sure if you were planning to
right.
public comment.
But
I'd
like to first let's move on, and the petitioners can think about this issue and decide if they want to try to address that. Let's see if any other members of the committee. Oh, I see Roberta's hand up, and then I'll ask for the members' comment from the members of the public. Go ahead, Roberta.
Yeah, as viscerally appealing as it is to talk about protecting every mature tree in town, I think this conversation is, you know, showing again how complex circumstances are and nature is. You know, I appreciate that we've lost canopy and some of it has been on private property. I don't know, you know, I think many people who own their own homes love the trees in their yard and they don't cut them down out of boredom. You know, that's kind of a straw man. And I think you all have done an enormous job of trying to anticipate some of the exceptions. And it feels like the exemptions, that list is sort of getting longer. As you talk to more people, it becomes clear how complex these situations really are, which is why I am hesitant about the idea of putting such a comprehensive administrative plan in place on top of this situation. It's so very rigid. And it requires a lot of, you know, discretion, as you're saying, on the part of the reviewing agent. And, you know, there are going to be exceptions. And people are increasingly, I hear people talking about it too, looking at the trees around and would it fall on my house in a strong wind? And people are increasingly taking that into account. It's perverse. It's because of climate change that we're in this position. But hey, it's where we are. And you know, so you're putting this structure in place and on top of nature, which is changing. I mean, an arborist may say one year that a tree is healthy, you can't take it down, and then it changes, you know, fairly quickly. And each time somebody's going to have to be applying for a permit and getting an arborist. I just have some real questions about how viable this is going to be and whether something that's more targeted. I agree with you. The 20 feet was, I thought, very problematic in a lot of ways too. But something more targeted might make more sense here.
All right, thank you, Roberta. Anybody else on the committee have any questions or comments? I don't see anyone in the audience.
Iris Albert has indicated to staff via email that they were interested in making a comment. So
who is? I'm sorry.
Iris.
Yes, thank you so much. It sounds like things are moving in its own direction, but I still have a question about the Dover Amendment. We have a situation out here in South Brookline.
Sorry, Iris, I don't want to cut. I'm sorry, I apologize to interrupt. Could you just quickly state your address or precinct for the record, please? Thank you.
Sure. Very inexperienced. Iris Alpert, Bellingham Road, precinct 15, I believe. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we have a situation out here where 2 lots are being combined on our street. Lots of growth on those 2 properties. There are 2 homes that are already there, so some clearing has already been done. But the plan is a Dover amendment plan. It's a huge structure that's going to be placed on these 2 residential lots. It's going to be one structure that covered 25,000 square feet.
Excuse me, Iris, is this Chabad Center?
Yes. That's
okay.
correct.
It's a religious, they have a religious exemption. Go ahead.
So that's the answer?
Yep.
Wow. For trees, all trees?
I mean, I'm not saying I like that, but, it is what it is. It's religious and educational institutions have more rights in terms of zoning and other town regulations than other people do.
So they won't be subject to any of the fines either?
I don't know the
big trees on those 2 lots.
I don't think they would be.
What? You don't think they would be subject to those fines?
I don't think they would be. I think the Dover Amendment would cover them here.
I suspect Ken is right. I mean, I'm not an expert in that area. I mean, when I was on the school committee, we dealt with that a lot. But Tom, do you have any knowledge about this area? No.
No, for anything for the Dover Amendment, I turned to town council on those issues.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, okay, but in this, I realize that nobody here has any power to change anything, but over and over, we're just coming up against how really unjust this law is in so many particular instances and how easily it's exploited. And that, nobody's listening to the neighbors. Oh, poor South Brookline neighbors, But yeah, this is the tree canopy. This is going to be the end of that section of tree canopy, and it's pretty big. It's right, on Bellingham Road, 2 lots right there at the beginning near Grove Street. It's just, and there's nothing we can do. I don't know.
Maybe the town can appeal to their better natures and.
Yeah, Iris, the Dover Amendment is a matter of state law. The town has
yes, I understand
no authority
that.
there, and believe me, you're not the first person to be offended by the Dover Amendment in the state, and so far the state legislature has not been willing to do anything about that.
Has it even been brought up there?
Oh, I'm quite certain of it,
but you're not.
I can't give you a specific example, but
Yeah.
Dover Amendment is in Lawyers Weekly every week. There's a Dover Amendment case in there.
But the town does have discretion on some things, and they're just not willing to. They're just not willing to, even though we can come up with a very good case. So, that's the problem. But yeah, appealing to their better natures, hopefully. Okay, this very, very sad. But thank you.
Sorry, we can't be more helpful.
Yeah.
Sandra, are you able to unmute Richard? He's having trouble. Richard Murphy.
Sorry, Richard left and rejoined. Give me 1 second. Sorry, Richard. Okay, you should be able to unmute. Sorry about that.
No, I got from the car into the office, so thank you.
Did you have a comment, Richard?
Not really. I mean, the only thing I'd say with Ken, as far as the current bylaw, in if a resident is splitting the lot, they would already be dealing with some of the tree protections that we all agreed to a couple of years ago, with 20 feet of the boundary and everything. So obviously there'd be additional costs if it's completely wooded, but the current bylaw already captures probably 70% of a developing lot would impose. So,
all right, any other
Yeah, and the other thing that, the other point that I made is, Bob Cook was a big advocate about neighbors talking to each other. So the permitting process is a notification to abutters. And I think that was something that Bob really echoed during our discussions over the years, that, keeping people being able to talk to each other and probably compromise or maybe choose not to take down a tree for the good of the neighborhood, And then, with the permitting process, besides tracking and notification, we look at, when we try to renovate something in the house, we have to pull a permit, whether it's a bathroom, kitchen or what have you. There's electrical codes and everything, and it's just there to protect society as a whole and other homeowners. And we view the trees as part of that landscape that we're trying to really get people to think along the same line. It's like not only inside the house, but outside the house is important to everybody. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any more comments from anybody on the committee? And then if not, are there any comments from people who have joined us? I don't see any raised hands. Only Iris, but I think that question was dealt with. Anyone else?
I think that's a new hand from Iris, just so you know.
Pardon me?
I think that is a new hand from Iris, just so you know.
Oh, okay. Iris, do you have an additional question?
Yes, I do. Just to clarify, and I'm sorry to take up people's times. I know everybody contributes so much to these committees. Just to clarify, so that includes, so this Dover will also include the 20-foot setback or the 20-foot, yes? So all trees everywhere, that's it, period? They could just take them down? Doesn't matter about the current bylaw at all? It could just, no? I'm just wondering.
Iris, we don't really have the expertise here
Okay.
But I suspect it does. I suspect you're correct that a Dover amendment does not even have to follow the 20.
Wow. Time to sell the house, maybe. I mean, it's just so unreasonable. Yeah.
Alexandra, I wonder whether you can consult with somebody in the town and find out whether or not the Dover amendment would apply to this. I believe it would, but I think or I can call, I call Jonathan Simpson and ask him.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm happy to follow up with town council with that question.
Yeah. So just so we know for sure, but both Ken and I think that it is probable, but neither of us want to say absolutely since we don't practice in that area. So maybe we get the definitive answer. Okay.
Sure.
Anybody else? Okay. I think we have covered as much as we're going to cover here. If no one else has any other questions or concerns, and the agenda calls for us now to talk about the update of the Urban Forest Climate Resiliency Master Plan. So why don't we move to that, and then we'll have a further discussion on, well, I guess we could have a vote now if you want to vote on the warrant article itself before we go to those other things. So I'm happy to do that. Is there a motion?
I'll second it.
Pardon me?
I'll second it. If you're making a motion,
I'll make a motion. I don't know if anybody made the motion. You want me to make it? I'll move the approval of the warrant article 16 for tree protection amendment to the current tree protection bylaw for the November town meeting. Richard seconds. I'm going to go through and call your name so we have the because Zoom can't see your hands as you raise them, but it wants to know that you speak. So Ken, how do you vote?
I'm not ready to support this until the issues that we've discussed are addressed, so I vote no.
Okay. Let me see, Liz?
I also vote no.
Okay, Roberta?
Not in its current form, no.
Richard?
I vote in favor.
All right, and the chair votes in favor as well. So that's 2 to 3 and no abstentions and no ties or anything like that. Okay, so why don't we move on to the update of the Urban Forest Climate Resilience Master Plan. And I assume that the petitioners will go back and think about some of the things we've discussed and decide if they can figure out a way to address the issues that the committee has raised. Tom or Alexandra, you want to tell us about the master plan?
Sure. So I'm going to let Tom do the update on where we stand with the Urban Forest Climate Resiliency Master Plan.
Alexandra, could you just let me thank the petitioners for all the incredible hard work they have done on this, because I know what it's like to do a warrant article. And, you're ready to chop your head off by the end. So I'm sure that they're feeling very worn down here. But in the end, hopefully the product that we get will be worth it. And so I want to thank them very much. And I also neglected, by the way, to introduce Jessica. Can you give us a wave, Jessica? She's the new administrative assistant for Parks and Open Space Division.
Well, she's not new to Parks and Open Space, but she is stepping in to cover Tree Protection Committee until the Conservation Assistant role. So she's new to you, but not to us.
New to us. All right. Well, it's nice to see you. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to the Urban Forest Climate Resiliency Master Plan. Too many words, but
yes,
we all know what we mean.
It's not even a good acronym, URFRUMP. Thank you. I think just looking at the time, if you don't mind, Tom, before you jump to your presentation, I might just ask if I could open up and just talk about something that connects to the Urban Forest Plan. And see if we could get support from the committee for that, which is, and I know, Nancy, you might need to recuse yourself from this conversation, but currently the Parks and Open Space Division is submitting a variety of Community Preservation Act applications, CPA applications, and one of which is aligned with one of the goals in the Urban Forest Climate Resiliency Master Plan, which is this idea that we would like to build out our database of surveying and assessing all of the trees that are on public property in Brookline. So that stem by stem inventory that was part of the original Urban Forest Plan only included our street trees. And so we've been working to add all of our parks and open spaces to that as well, and then use that information to help inform our management and care decisions for the long-term preservation of the urban tree canopy on those public grounds. So with that, we have a proposal that we're submitting to the Community Preservation Act Committee for consideration, which includes conducting surveys at 3 of our parks, Waldstein, Warren, and Harry Downs. Sorry, been a long day. And then also includes utilizing data from our previous inventories to make any necessary pruning and planting decisions based off the health assessment of those surveys. So what I am interested in this evening is wondering if the Tree Protection Committee would be interested in providing a letter of support for that application. One of the things that CPA asks for is for different boards and commissions and committees to share any feelings that they have or thoughts that they have on a particular application. And given that this is implementation of the Urban Forest Plan, I wanted to bring it before this committee tonight.
Okay, I think that's a great idea. You're right. I will recuse myself from the vote since I am the chair of the CPA committee. So I'll be voting on this later, but I'll go ahead and moderate this discussion, and not express my opinion if that's. I will tell the committee that the applications that Alexandra and the town have submitted on these things have passed the initial eligibility screen, and they're moving ahead in the grant application process, which will involve submitting a grant. The grants will be, the ending date, I think, for grant submission is in December, and then the committee starts to work on the to analyze all of the different proposals and make a decision in March or early April for the spring town meeting. So that's how it will go, just to give you a sense of the process. So anyone have questions about the application and whether or not we should support it?
Sounds like a great idea. I support it.
I would agree. I just wonder how you chose those 3 parks.
Yeah, good question. So last year we did more parks because we did a similar application to CPA last year. And so we did smaller parcels and focused on more parks. So we did like Mason Square, Nivet Square, and really focused on parks in Emerson Garden. So parks in North Brookline that were a little bit smaller. And then this year we looked at fewer parcels, but larger ones that to try to balance out what we were doing. And then the other thing that we look at is we have started as another way to achieve this goal. Whenever we're doing a capital project at any park, we include this tree survey and assessment in that. So we also looked ahead to parks that we don't see coming up in our 7-year capital improvement plan. And so therefore we don't have another means of conducting that tree survey and assessment. So it's a little bit of matching both kind of geography, size of the parcel, and then looking at where we wouldn't be able to check the box elsewhere. Mm-hmm. Anything else you would add to that, Tom? You feel free, please.
No, I think that makes sense. And there was a small dollop of looking at parks where we may have had some tree issues of concern. He wanted to make sure we had a second set of eyes on those as well.
Who will do the inventory, Tom?
It needs to go out to bid. But they will be utilizing our system. It's a cloud-based system. So the arborist comes in and puts the data into the database that we own and maintain. So there's no concern there. There are awful lot of proprietary systems out there. But once you put the data in, it's very difficult to get it back out. So in this case, it'll become ours right from the get-go, which is great.
And it will be, as Tom mentioned, a certified arborist that's doing that assessment as well.
Fantastic. I support.
Okay. So are we ready for a vote? I guess we are. Somebody want to make a motion? I can't do that.
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve a letter of support.
Second.
Okay. So Liz moves and Ken seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Liz? Roberta?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes, I'm just off camera because I'm eating dinner late. Sorry.
Okay. And the chair abstains for reasons that I disclosed earlier. Okay.
Great.
So,
thank you. So can I just ask who would like typically the chair signs on behalf of the committee. So is someone else here the best person to ask for that? John?
Yeah, we don't really have a vice chair. Does anyone particularly want to take that role? Liz?
Sure.
Okay.
Voluntold.
I thought you were going like that. Okay.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks.
Then you move your head.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you all. Appreciate your help and support. And Liz, I'll connect with you offline about the signature. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tom. Thank you.
Okay. So now we're going to discuss the Parks and Open Space plan. Is that?
Yes, so I just want to check in. It is, Richard alluded to my question inadvertently. It's about 7 minutes before 7. We had the scheduled 5:37. I just, if folks have to run, I don't know if you want to. I'm happy to do it. We did an update that aligns with the 5 significant goals within the action plan. So there's not a terribly large amount of slides. That was purposeful, but it will take a few minutes.
Okay, that's all right. We committed ourselves to being here till at least 7, so keep
Great.
going.
Okay.
I have to dash, but please start and I'll do as much as I can.
Well, wait a minute. If you dash, we lose our quorum.
Right, that's my point.
Okay, I'll go off camera and then pop back for the.
Okay.
Tom, do you need me to pull up the slides?
If you could, or I can do it either way. So I can do it.
You know what? I actually have them right here. One sec.
Okay, great.
I might go off camera too, by the way.
Okay. All right, so you can go ahead and advance, Alexandra, and we'll move right through this a little bit. So the Urban Forest Climate Resiliency Master Plan had an action plan within it that summarized future actions that we should consider and broken down into these different categories. So what we've done is gone through and take a look at what those suggested actions were and compare that against where we are. Next slide. Go ahead and click. Okay. So there's a few things that are going on here. The good news is through thick and thin, we have continued to plant 350 plus or minus trees in the public ways, and as these capital projects are coming through, you heard Alexander reference, we are working hard to actually increase the canopy within each of those open spaces. So that's been successful. We have adapted our planting list that we use to acknowledge the changes that are taking place in our climate. And we have a few new species, among others, yellowwood, Kentucky coffee tree, and serviceberry that we're using. We are removing invasives, both through staff efforts and as part of projects, and as part of volunteer efforts in replanting with natives wherever the opportunity can present itself. So it was formerly called the backup sidewalk tree planting, and I wasn't sure which one to call it. It's currently called the front yard tree program planting, and with the great assistance from Mothers Out Front and others, we've had a terrific increase in the amount of folks who are taking advantage of that program, which just allows us to use public funds to plant trees on private spaces where they have a better chance of living. So that works pretty well. And we have enhanced in our coordination with large agencies such as MBTA and Mass DOT for the projects within Brookline, such as the MBTA capacity enhancement and an accessibility program you've heard about, as well as the Washington Street Corridor project, which is on the MassDOT process. And that's how we're advancing in that particular arena. Next slide, please. In terms of urban forest protection, we have increased the budget for the staff within the forestry department. But to make sure we're making good use of those funds and good use of our program, we continue to work with IT staff to improve the efficiency of our programs. And you just heard me speak to Liz about that, rather than create a separate standalone tree inventory and then bring it in. That's a good example of where we're making it accessible and doing it right in place, which is fantastic. We just had the discussion dialogue that this next bullet point references. So I will skip right over that. And we have increased our web and social media resources for folks. That needs to expand more, and we will be looking to make that more accessible. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute briefly. Next slide, please. Thanks to great support by town meeting and by Alexandra, we increased the funding for what we call whole street pruning. And we really did a terrific push for 18 whole streets in fiscal 23. There are clear trends there where we're pruning, we're seeing less incidences and of storm damage, and it's really providing benefit. So we're going to be doing that again this fiscal year, and we're looking to increase that capability. The position that I'm in, the urban forestry manager, was created, and I have transitioned over to this role a couple months ago. So thank you all for that. Additionally, there's some realignment going on within our division that will create professional development pathways for staff as they advance along, so that we have a better retention rate and people feel more challenged, and they feel that there's a longer term opportunity here for them. Going back to the pruning of the 18 streets, thanks to the vote of town meeting and the work by the commissioner and Alexandra and the whole budget team, we do have funding in place for a very significant capital investment, which is an entire another bucket truck and chipper, along with the personnel to run that equipment. And the bucket truck and the chipper have been, the purchase agreements have been executed. The chipper has arrived. The bucket truck should be here in not too long. That will directly allow us to prune, continue that whole street pruning that I just referenced up above in a more effective manner for the community, which will pay enormous long-term dividends going forward. On the climate action front, some of the things that the plan suggested was taking a bit of a more regional approach. And to that end, we meet quarterly with all our colleagues from Boston, Somerville, Newton, all around us to take a look, and that group of people is expanding, which is great. The more folks we can get involved in that, the better we can compare notes, see what's working, what's not, and things such as that. There's a brand new sustainability division, which Alexandra is the director of, which is fantastic. And that division is responsible for the implementation of the Urban Forest Climate Resiliency Master Plan. And I will work with the division and make sure that our work plans are aligning with the goals of the Climate Resiliency Master Plan. And we'll have discussions and dialogue to make sure that is the case as things progress. The plan certainly references the need to update LiDAR data on a regular basis. The team that did the LiDAR work the first time around are in a bit of flux. That's the tough news. The great news is that building on that regional approach, there are folks in the greater Boston area that are looking to get a new LiDAR data layer developed, and we're in discussions with them, which will be beneficial in terms of efficiency and cost and getting it done in a regular basis. Next slide, please. Bringing on this additional crew is a significant change for the community, and I truly believe will be a change in the positive. And there are many little things going forward that will benefit from that additional crew. Just the awareness of the urban forest that we have out there, the species that we have, the particular streets that have particular concerns, the work in and around our schools, and things such as that people learn over time as they're on the streets doing this work, will just allow us to have a better product and better benefits for the trees. And to do that, we need to look not just to funding straight from the operating budget or rely on just a capital budget, but we're also looking to leverage grant funds and opportunities and mitigation funds from large development pieces to help us do that work. Coordination with utilities has already enhanced in my short time, in this full-time position. They continue to work in town. We continue to keep a closer look on them. Both Eversource and Verizon are both in town working at this point, and they both have tree crews that report into us on a regular basis and let us know where they're working and what they're looking to do. The community outreach and engagement efforts have increased. In addition to myself transitioning into here, Alex, who is our former lead ranger, has transitioned into the Conservation Natural Resources role, and that has allowed us to bring Kiera in as the new lead ranger and director of visitor services. So we'll be reaching with her to increase that outreach and those engagement efforts. So it's always happy to spread the word about trees. And I'm happy to note that the new Miyawaki Forest on Brookline Avenue, after a tough, rough and tumble battle with rabbits, has made it through and is out on the other side. And so we have a survival rate of roughly 71% after some additional fencing, so some additional deterrence, nothing that is chemical based, a series of different techniques that we use to move it forward. it does 71%. It's really fun to watch. In particular, the different size trees grab hold, and you can tell pretty clearly where they grab hold and when they shoot up in height and length. So overall, we're doing quite well, and things are moving along. So next slide, please. And I think that's it. We tried to keep it focused. We had a sense that we were going to be tight on time, but the good news is that each one of those areas, as set forth in the action plan, we have clear progress in each one of those areas. And we have clear room for improvement and more growth to go. So overall, I think the roadmap is working, and we're trending in the right direction for sure, I think. And that's what I have for the group.
Okay, I didn't see anything in there that we really needed to have a vote on, but I'm really pleased to see that we're moving ahead. We had so many doubts about how we're going to make this happen, and between the town increasing its budget in the forestry division and CPA in its more limited capacity helping to do the tree inventories, et cetera, we're making some progress, I think. So that's terrific. Now, I just would like to ask if you have any suggestions about getting rid of rabbits. I wouldn't mind hearing.
The big thing we learned is
around my yard, no matter what I do.
Yeah, when you put the fences up, make sure the holes are very small.
Yeah,
because they
get tall. They're very resourceful. They get very tall.
Oh, they jump, they climb, and they do all sorts of
things.
Yeah,
I mean, my vegetable garden was pathetic.
Yeah.
I felt like I was, providing a feast for the. I was a diner for the rabbits.
Yeah, we felt that way as well. And honestly, Nancy, my advice is not the most glamorous, but coyote urine seems to be deterring them as well. And then the other thing we tried was cayenne pepper.
Cayenne pepper.
So it was a very weird purchase order that we had to make to execute this, trial.
Did the cayenne pepper work?
Yes.
Yeah, something between the combination of the coyote urine and the cayenne pepper, some combo there. Maybe it's the mix.
Yeah, I've tried fox urine, but then it rains and then there's no more fox urine. So it's expensive. But anyway, all right. Well, I take those under. But the growing season is over now, so the rabbits have won this year. But maybe next year I'll be better in my battle. Okay. So thank you very much, both to Alexander and Tom, for all the work you're doing, and pleased to see that we're going to actually be able to implement this thing. I know we have a long way to go, but getting started seemed to be the hardest part. Did we have any comments or questions from the members of the committee?
I have one, Nancy.
Sorry, Richard, was that you?
That was me.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering on two things, Tom. Was I don't know 18 Whole Street. Is that a complete street initiative? I'm only trying to Google it, but I don't know that term of 18th Street. Was in your presentation you showed about 18 streets as far as pruning back the trees.
18 streets is just speaks, Richard, to the 18 streets that we pruned every tree on the street.
Okay, so there's a list of 18 streets. Got it. Okay, my misunderstanding. I Googled it and it was 18th Street was part of a initiative, complete street prioritization.
No,
so I wasn't sure.
That goes back to Richard First. Every year we're asked to list in the budget book how many whole streets we pruned. And 2 years ago, just as we were finishing up the plan, I believe it was 2 and then it was 8 and it was striking. And now we're back up there, which is where we need to be, which is good.
And then the other one that I had was you mentioned Mothers Out Front with the front yard project. What if is there any numbers of showing the success with that, and is that going to continue going forward?
We had 18 front yard tree plantings last year, and I believe we're at 16 this year, as opposed to in the 3 to 4 range in the years before that, before we had Mothers Out Front assisting us and before we repackaged the program. So we've had exponential growth, which is great.
And sounds good.
Every year the review process for those sites gets better. So we have more success when people give initial concern and getting them all the way through the finished product.
Is there a limitation to what Mothers Out Front does for this added plus for planting?
Not a lot. They help us identify spaces and connect us with folks who have interest. And then what we've done is we've worked with Mothers Out Front and done a couple trainings to help them identify things to look for when considering tree planting locations, such as underground utilities or overhead utilities that may present some challenges.
Right. Okay. So this is definitely, it's not limited still. We're able to still grow that. There's room for growth, I guess is my question at the end of
There is. There are some statutory restrictions with the program. We can't go more than 20 feet off the public right of way. Yep. So that there are some restrictions there, but to see it grow several 100% is a result of those efforts. So it's good to see.
Last thing is you say 20 feet. Would DCR roadways be different where they're?
Yes.
I think they're 20 feet in their property line, right? Versus Brookline is like 10, I think.
Correct. Plus it's DCR property as opposed to town property. Yep.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I just wanted to add that I think that the front yard tree program is also really exciting. And I feel like there's a lot more potential for that. You know, in my neighborhood on Corey Hill, there are a number of yards that could really benefit. And that's an area that coming up Summit Ave, we need more trees. And on the urine front, candidly, I think some good community outreach would be to have a, you know, if we want the residents in this town to do something, don't pee on the tree. Don't let the dog pee on the tree. You know, that is not an insignificant problem for our public.
That doesn't help.
Yeah. And, you know,
it certainly kills the
grass. More love.
But it does to the tree.
Tommy talking about the trees in Coolidge Corner and how they would get ruined by so much dog attention.
Mm-hmm. They're just marking them. It's not as if they need to urinate there. It's a completely different sort of
force of habit, Roberta.
So anyway, I don't know how far down that road we want to go, but just wanted to mention it when I heard Nancy raise the topic.
Well, I was thinking about the if the urine keeps the rabbits, they think, you know, they smell it. And I used fox urine, but apparently coyote urine works just as well. And you know, you have to buy it online basically, and you know, keeps the rabbits out of your yard or away from your vegetables. I don't think it kills the vegetables.
No.
But you know, I've used it against skunks too. So I, at one point in my number of years here, I've had a skunk invasion. So had a dog who got skunked 5 times in his 6-year life.
So, he just never learned.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so you're not asking for any vote on this, are you, Tom?
No, ma'am. It was an update to let folks know that.
Yeah, no, I think it's very important.
We'll continue to work.
Yeah. Okay, so unless there's any other business, we can adjourn. Does anybody else have any comments they want to make? And I didn't ask anybody in the audience if they won't have any comments. I don't see anybody from the public other than the petitioners. Iris is still with us. Any other, I guess there are no comments, then it's time for us to adjourn. I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roberta?
Yes.
Liz? Can't hear you. You're muted.
Yes.
Okay. Ken?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Am I missing somebody? No. And the chair votes up yes. So we are adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody. Appreciate your time.